Heck, a Greek pita that I wouldn't wait in line an hour and a half for the other night, but still craving one. David, you got something on your mind. I know that look. You got something to fire at us.
I I truly don't. I'm just getting hungry. It's your turn, I guess, to turnabout is fair play, right?
Ka'deem Carey is a Saskatchewan Roughrider. Looking at the text line, Maz called it on Thursday. But did you see this one coming?
I wasn't. I wouldn't have called it on Thursday by any means, but again, I don't know what the extent of AJ Ouellette's injury, but anytime you can make your roster better and deeper, I think you do, and that's, in my opinion, exactly what Jeremy O'Day has done by bringing in Ka'deem Carey, a guy that has won. I heard what Coach Mace was saying, and he hit the nail right on the head. You've made your roster better today.
Sorry, Maz, I thought you were going to go.
Dave, when you and I chatted on Friday, I had mentioned the Ka'deem Carey thing because a lot of people don't know about AJ Ouellette, and because we think it was a head injury. From when you watch the replay, it looked like a head injury. No, they're saying upper body. No one has said anything. You always have to be extra cautious with that. Thomas Bertrand Houdon came in and did admirably. It's funny. What were the final numbers for Houdon? Because there's two sets of numbers out of that game, and we said it with Mace. It didn't seem like the Renegades or the Red Blacks, whatever Ottawa's going by these days, threw for 400 yards against the Riders. It didn't seem like that. And to me, Bertrand Houdon, was it 60 or 70 yards? Because the way he was running, I'm like, dude's got to be like over 100.
He had the 40. It just
seemed like every time he what?
The 40, whatever it was, came back. So they would have been over 100 or darn near close, right, Dave?
Absolutely. Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind is that he also had a bunch of receiving yards as well, right? Yeah. That's why it would seem over 100, and I'm with you on that. But going back, watching and listening to the game again, wow, it sure did seem like they had over 400 yards when you start piecing the drives that Drew Brown put together. And again, they weren't the big grand slam home run. It was just being effective and efficient within the offense and moving the ball effectively in the first and fourth quarters. And again, when you can't run the ball, only putting up 30 yards rushing, you're going to put some passing yardage up. I don't think 400, though, was exactly what anybody wanted to see.
It seemed like the Red Blacks played a great first and fourth quarter. They completely deserted the building in the second and third. And that's what cost them. Like, Barney, I heard you talking on Friday with Sharky. That first drive, when they marched down the field, I was like, oh no. Drew Brown's looking like Tom Brady out here slinging the ball around. And we didn't have an answer. Eventually we did. But I'm like, if he stays hot like this all game, we're in trouble. But it cooled. And then the Rider D-line kicked in. But then you're counting, and the same thing, Roland Milligan, all of a sudden he's out of the game. What's going to happen there? Is that a head issue? Is it a neck? What's happening? Last Monday we said, hey, you know who we felt bad that got cut, who played a really good game, was Braxton Hill. Well, good news today, Braxton Hill, your defensive player of the game for preseason week 2 against the Bombers. He's back in Rider Nation, Dave.
No, he is, and again, you've added depth pieces, and you've got the ability to make your roster stronger. Tomorrow, when the team is back on the field, we'll have a better idea of what the injury situation does and or might look like. And going back to that football game, the one thing that really stood out, now again, there's so many small numbers that I've got within the game that we can share later if we want, but the one thing that really stood out was that the Ottawa Red Blacks had to really manipulate their ratio in that football game. For example, if you looked on the depth chart, William Stanbeck was not listed as the starter, right? Because he's an American. So the roster manipulation in game by the Ottawa Red Blacks was pretty masterful, but they also had a pretty thin defensive line. And you heard Thomas Bertrand Houdon talk about it. By the end of the game, he felt that they were tired, that his fresh offensive line, who was in great shape, was able to go ahead and take an advantage of a fatigued unit for the Ottawa Red Blacks. And you look back, and a lot of numbers and a lot of things point to that success as being a real big factor that we really didn't talk about last Thursday night, but it definitely was one that showed its head, if you will, during the game.
Back to the running back situation, and AJ Ouellette, obviously he takes a blow to his head. Like, that is clear as day. And if you've ever worn a helmet, doesn't matter if it's you're riding a motorcycle or playing hockey or whatever. When your bell still gets rung. There's no. I think that the Carey thing. This is again just me. It's week 1. He runs so violently. This wasn't even a him running violent injury. This was just a football. You know what happens, kind of thing, right? Guy's head hit his. Happens all the time. And then he got his bell rung. So if we're in this situation in 1, and Thomas Bertrand-Houdon is a good fill-in guy, but looking at it as we go along here, you definitely add. If Maz and I talked in hour 1 about the cap thing, who cares? Like, really, how much can he put us over? Let's say we're at it right now. Big deal. Bring him in. Because AJ, no offense to anybody, he ain't playing every game this year. Have you watched him run? It's just not going to happen. And now you got Ka'deem and Thomas to fill the void. It just makes so much sense, and how they pulled it off so quick. And talking to Coach Mace is probably in the works as soon as they saw it on their wire or whatever that he got released.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind, if you go back to the Rider Nation pregame show from Thursday night when the commissioner was on with us and was talking with us, and the one thing that he was asked was, what's the cap number? He didn't have a real good answer for that just yet, and that's not a condemnation of the commissioner or the league, but hey, remember right before the free agent signing period, right? They talked about how what the salary cap has gone up. So who knows who spent to what level of the cap, right?
Did he use the word ish? That would have been better. If he would have said ish.
No,
$5.6 million ish, give or take. Cans and bottles, depends. The one thing about Ka'deem Carey, if you look at his stats, last year he played 18 games. I think the seasons before that, he's been durable as long as he's been in the CFL. He's been able to stay on the field. He's been the leading rusher twice in the CFL. He's won a Grey Cup, and Mace alluded to that. When you can add a guy of that character to the room that's been there and been in those situations where they want to be, that kind of stuff is worth way more than just, we've added another guy to the roster. There's the intangibles that he would bring to the dressing room. That game Saturday, Dave, when you watch Dedrick Mills from the Stamps run, him and Ka'deem Carey, I always got so confused because they both run so hard and they hit the hole so hard. You're like, okay. But it's a little different than Ouellette because, as May said, Carey's a very patient runner. And when he sees it, he goes, but he's not just looking to blast right away. He'll pick his spots.
No, absolutely. That's the difference in the two runners, both very successful at what they do. And if there's one thing that this move states to me overall is the importance that the Saskatchewan Roughriders are putting on their run game. Because last year, right, go through that stretch during the summer when AJ Ouellette was out, when Frankie Hickson was the guy that was carrying the ball, when we were going through all of that offensive line turnover, it's pretty tough to establish a running game. But when the Riders do, you look at the numbers and they don't lie. When the Saskatchewan Roughriders can find themselves in second and medium situations, most of the time, it correlates to a win for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So finding that balance, I'm sure, is a priority for Mark Mueller this year. He had to get away from it a little bit last year due to personnel and injury woes. But again, the numbers don't lie. And when the Roughriders find themselves, as does every other team, but again, especially the Saskatchewan Roughriders, the statistics show you get that running game going, you're going to be successful.
Watching football, and I'm Maz, I don't know how your in-laws are, but you watch it with family members, and then it'll be on first down, and we run the ball, and we don't get anything, right? Because that happens. That happens in football. Mm-hmm. You don't get any yard. You might even lose yards. Why are we doing that? Why are we? Because this is how the game works. If you can pick up 4 or 5, and now you got second and manageable, it opens up so much. And it's just like returning kicks. Field position, especially if your elements are playing into it in football, it's just like, oh, yeah.
Well, and
They gave
you're
over the
bang on though with that right away, right? When you look at the running numbers for the Saskatchewan Roughriders last week compared to Ottawa, Ottawa put up 30, but they had to make an adjustment because they weren't able to run against the Saskatchewan Roughriders front seven. So that's why they went to that short passing game, Barney, and you're bang on, right? So that short passing game really essentially became the running game of the Ottawa Redblacks throughout the course of the game. That and getting back to field position, how about a shout out to Mario Alford, right? He knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. And again, he was challenged and he rose to the occasion. The Saskatchewan Roughriders in week 1 had the best starting field position out of any team in the Canadian Football League with an average start at their own 42.2 yard line.
I feel that it would be great to use that Jim Carrey gif from Ace Ventura where he's chomping on his food and that pissed off face. That was Mario Alford going into that game.
Yeah, it was, and he ran with purpose. You got to go, and he'll be the first guy, I'm sure, that will go ahead and point to the blocking that he got because the Riders' special teams, I thought, were bang on in week number 1, and they created some holes, some opportunities, and creases for him, and he exploited them.
Dave, one of the things, and maybe it's just the algorithm that I'm exposed to on the social channels, a lot of talk about the AJ situation and the running back. But remember a couple of years ago? Oh, speaking of algorithms, I got some new ones over the weekend.
There's so many jokes I want to use.
When Roland Milligan got hurt a few years ago, the Riders season went in the tank. Roland Milligan gets hurt in the game, and he's out. And whether or not he wanted to go back in, but he didn't play the rest of the game. How worried should we be? He is the number 2 player in the CFL. He is... the defense for the Riders is really good, but a lot of it runs through Roland Milligan. Like, I don't know that we've spent enough time being concerned about number 0 on the Rider D.
No, absolutely, right? When you're the reigning defensive player of the year in the Canadian Football League and you go down, absolutely, that's a huge blow because you want him on the field and in the roster. And I think much to the Riders' credit, they really err on the side of the athlete, right? So sometimes you have to protect the athlete from themselves. You've heard it before in hockey or whatever, right? You hit his helmet or you took away the skates, right? You got to make sure that the players are protected from themselves sometimes. I don't have any diagnostics on what Roland Milligan Jr. is, but the one thing I can say is that the linebacking core and the secondary for the Saskatchewan Roughriders is the envy of a lot of teams in the Canadian Football League, despite the fact that they gave up 400 yards throwing. Passing. But you look at CJ Rivas, you look at CJ Avery, you look at guys like Nelson Lacombo, who's coming into his own. Jackson Ford was sensational. He's nicked up now. But again, you got all the confidence in the world. DeMarcus Fields on the other side, Marcus Sales, Tavon Campbell. Who do you want to throw at? Like Marcus Sales, his whole job was to shut down Geno Lewis. And aside from one catch right at the goal line, which I didn't think was a touchdown, but on further review is a touchdown. Again, who do you want to mess with? Now you add Roland Milligan Jr. back into that mix. Like, that's pretty formidable.
Tavon Campbell, Eugene Lewis matchup. I'm looking forward to him on any receiver in the league. Oh, I mentioned this last week. It's like when I used to watch Rivas, when Rivas was at the Patriots, for that brief stint, and they just put him on the best receiver and say, okay, that's done. Now let's play over here.
That's what the Riders did with Marcus Sales, and it's going to be, I'm sure, Kenny Lawler and Marcus Sales that'll square off this week in Hamilton.
And then Amari Henderson, was Luke hard on him. I was for the first few breaks.
You know what?
It was like Amari Henderson was that kid that showed up in jeans, and it was just like, just pick on him all day.
Well, the entire Ottawa secondary was brand new, though, right? Like all 5 players had never played before. Even in the preseason, they didn't get in together. So it was an entirely new unit. And Amari Henderson was moved to half, if you notice that, from corner where the Riders deployed him most of last year. So it's a new position for him. And there were some times where you could just see the secondary screaming at one another. Like there were some times that it was a growing pains kind of night for the Ottawa Redblacks.
So off to Hamilton this week. They looked okay in Calgary at times in spurts. For whatever reason, Bo Levi Mitchell, even some of his new receivers, they're dropping passes for whatever reasons. And Kenny Lawler is not a guy that drops a lot of passes, but that happened on Saturday. I expect them to be better at home. But Scott Milanovich, Levi Mitchell, who has always played well against the Riders, they're going to be aggressive. Aggressive. It's going to be attack, and that Riders secondary is going to be under fire because even if it's not working, they're going to go back to it, just like in Calgary. That didn't care if he sailed it 20 yards over dude's head. Here it comes again.
No, you're right. And the running back is Greg Bell for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And he's got some moves. He looks like he understands the offense quite well. But how is he going to fare against the Riders front seven? That might be the difference. But in that game in Calgary, now that was the one thing that baffled me was how the wind that was gusting really seemed to be a non-factor in many that were talking about the game. But like, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, they took the ball and the wind in the third quarter so that they could try to erase the 2-score deficit, and then they messed up the kickoff by not taking the ball. So I thought the wind was much more of a factor. I thought it played a factor in some of the balls that were thrown, and I thought Calgary used home field advantage masterfully. Like, they scored when they had the wind, and then they chewed up clock when they didn't.
All right, boys. Colson's saying we got to wrap.